Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Becky Perkins, Survivor Support Specialist with Zero Abuse Project. Super happy to welcome you to today's session where we'll answer or talk about how to answer the question, how are you feeling? Thank you for your patience here for just a couple minute delay. Technology is wonderful when it works. So we are working and we're online now, and so glad that you're here. I'm very happy to welcome back Dr. Sarah Helms, who will be our presenter today. Just a couple of notes about how to participate in today's session. So the live stream, as you're probably seeing, is available on the right side of your screen on Survivor Space. If you would like to see it bigger, it is live streaming on YouTube. So you can click on that box and it can bring it to the full screen if you would like to see it larger. To ask a question or contribute a comment at any point during today's session, please feel free to type into the chat. Sarah is not able to see the questions and comments, but I will relay them to her. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sarah. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Becky. Good to be back. Funny, we're talking about feelings today. As Becky said, we had a little bit of a technology hiccup at the beginning of this, so I'm feeling a little more stressed and out of sorts than I would at the beginning of a normal presentation, but I'm glad that we're here and up and running. As she said, I'm not going to be able to see your comments as they're coming in live, but if there are any clarifying questions or urgent questions that need to be addressed during the presentation, she can kind of pop on screen and interrupt me with those. Otherwise, we'll probably hold those questions and discussion until the end, just since we won't be toggling back and forth as much. But we're going to talk about feelings today, emotions, and really the art of emotion identification. Just briefly to acknowledge our funding for Survivor Space through the Zero Abuse Project and some grant monies here. So probably the most common question that we get asked all day long, every day, you walk into a store, you walk and meet a friend, it's, hey, how are you, right? How are you? How are you feeling? How are you doing? And of course, the common response to that, right? Fine, I'm doing fine, doing well. How are you? Good, great, But it's not a question that we often linger on or give a lot of thoughtful response to, and maybe for good reason, right? Maybe the cashier at the grocery doesn't need to know every detail about how you're feeling deep inside. So maybe for the sake of just being brief, we say fine. But it's really important to stop and pause and think and check in about how we're feeling. It's something that we don't just naturally wake up, or we're not just born knowing how to identify our feelings. It's something that is a skill that takes time and practice, certainly. But it's important. It's important to know ourselves and to know how to practice this skill of looking inward, of really taking the time to pause and check in and figure out, what am I feeling and why, and where's that coming from? What's that about? And how can I learn from that or use that information to grow and do better? So how are you? Maybe a harder question than what it seems on the surface. Of course, when we're talking about physical health, there are a lot of ways that we can go into a medical office and get data around how we are feeling, right? We've got all sorts of tools and assessments and measures. They can draw our blood, they can take our temperature, check our blood pressure, right? All of these numbers can kind of come back to a physician and give them information about how we are feeling, how we're doing physically. Unfortunately, when it comes to mental health or emotions or feelings, you can't come into my office and get a thermometer and read, oh, look, they're feeling sad and worried today. Like I don't have that skill set or those tools, at least not yet in terms of our scientific progress in the world. But it's important for us to figure out then when we're trying to figure out in terms of mental health or emotions how we're feeling, there are tools available. Maybe not with the precision of a blood draw or thermometer or stethoscope, But there are tools available to us, and practicing using those tools can help us in the long run to get better at getting some data about how we're feeling, and then maybe using that data to change how we feel, if we want to shift our mood or our feelings, or to lean deeper into those feelings, really experience the fullness of some of those human emotions. Maybe use those emotions towards productive energy, towards goals or values that we want to move in those directions. So the first tool I'm going to describe today is how we think about defining emotions, and maybe an analogy for that being that they are like ice cream. And that might sound a little weird. I love ice cream, so it makes sense to me, but if you'll hang with me, we'll try to talk it through. So ice creams come in different flavors, right? You can go into an ice cream shop and there's a strawberry, there's a chocolate, there's a vanilla, right? Different flavors of ice cream. So similarly, emotions come in different flavors, right? There's sadness or happiness or anxiety, or all these different flavors, different types of feelings. And that's fine, and that's good. So often those types of basic emotions are maybe easier to spot, easier to identify or label. Just like when you walk into the ice cream shop, that basic chocolate or that basic vanilla, you can kind of look at that and immediately know what you're getting, right? But there are also other types of flavors, right? Sometimes you go into the ice cream shop and what you see is this bucket of like a rocky road. It's got like a vanilla base, but then there's a fudge and caramel swirl running through it. It's got bits of, toffee or nuts or brownie bites and cookie dough in there. It's all swirled in there. There's a whole lot going on in those, right? It's a little harder to look at that bucket and immediately identify like what's the name of that flavor right there. And feelings can be like that too. We don't always just get one simple basic emotion like I'm feeling sad. Sometimes feelings come all swirly, whirly with lots of different stuff mixed in. You can feel mixed emotions and lots of different emotions at the same time. So you may be feeling sad and excited and nervous all at the same time, and it's kind of swirled all around inside. And sometimes in those situations, it's harder to parse out and figure out what exactly am I feeling, because there's all these different pieces and they're kind of all churning around at the same time. And that's totally normal. It's normal for us as humans to have mixed emotions about things. You could probably think of situations in your own life where you felt 2 or 3 or more ways about the same situation. Think about a recent move and when we moved to a new city and thinking, well, I'm sad to say goodbye to my old friends, but I'm excited to meet new people and move into some new opportunities in a new place. I'm nervous about how some of these transitions are going to go. Maybe I'm angry about some things that led up to us moving. Maybe there's all this stuff, right, that can get all swirled in there. And you're feeling all those things at the same time, kind of like that swirly, whirly caramel chocolate, rocky road ice cream flavor too, right? So for sure, we know that ice creams and also emotions can come in different flavors. They also can come in different serving sizes, right? You can go in the ice cream shop and just get one small scoop of vanilla, or you can get a triple decker, big scoop like this one with stuff just layered on. You can get a big bucket with, the all you can eat ice cream special. You've got so much ice cream piled in there, right? Feelings are like that too. Sometimes we're a little bit sad. Sometimes we're big sad, right? So sometimes those feelings, once we identify them, and what flavor or what type of emotion we're having, we then move to the next stage of saying, well, how big or how small is this feeling? And that tool of being able to sort of identify the size of the feeling, can sort of translate to this idea of a feelings thermometer. So as I said, you come into my office for a mental health checkup. I don't have a thermometer to stick in and label exactly what you're feeling. But you internally might practice that skill of using a thermometer, of sort of pausing and looking inward and saying, okay, how big or how small? If you imagine that thermometer there on the screen, if that had numbers from 0 to 10 or 0 to 100, How big would you rate? Is this an anger that's like at a level 2, or is this an anger that's like at a level 10, right? Like I'm a volcano about to erupt, or I'm a little bit frustrated or perturbed, but I'm not through the roof yet, right? So those different sizes of feelings are also an important aspect of getting this skill of emotion identification. Is figuring out, what am I feeling and how big or how small is it? Now, that skill also is really important because sometimes, especially when we start to get big emotions, sometimes we act on those emotions in ways that we later say, well, if I wasn't in that emotional state, I might not have reacted in that way. Anger is probably a big one, a big example of that one, where, if I'm at an anger level 10, right, I'm like the volcano erupting, I might react with that anger, with emotion. I might react using behaviors that I later regret. So being able to sort of catch ourselves and notice, oh, my thermometer is starting to tick up a little bit. I'm noticing that I'm starting to increase on the size of this. I might need to do something to address that or manage that or notice it at least, and not allow that feeling to then dictate my behavior. Also, when you very first start using this idea of a feelings thermometer, a lot of times it's just easier to notice when the feelings are big, right? So even practicing that skill of, how do I notice where my feeling thermometer is at any given moment, instead of waiting until I'm all the way up here at a level 10, I wonder if I could notice it when it's small. And obviously it's a lot harder to notice if you've only got a tiny bit, rather than if you've got a whole big old bunch of it. So if you've only got a little bit of anger, you might not be tuned into it as much. And that might be a skill that takes a little more practice compared to noticing that anger when you're, up here at a level 10. These balloons, these kind of animated faces here, give you a sampling of what are some of what we call core emotions. So happy, sad, angry, surprised, scared, disgusted. These are some of the core emotional building blocks. And often these are the ones that are a little bit easier to learn how to name, identify, notice, because they are the more basic core emotions that we experience. And then from there, we build out towards sometimes increasingly complicated emotions or combinations of emotions. So you might say, happy, sad, angry. Those are sort of like your chocolate and vanilla ice creams, right? Those are sort of those core emotions. But they also get more complicated. And so there are some tools that are really interesting and helpful to use. These are called emotion wheels. There are lots of different versions of these. And if you just go online and if you go to Google Image and you just search up some emotion wheels, you can find ones that maybe are a good fit or that click for you. But as you can see on the emotion wheel, we start out in the center with some of those core emotions like happy or sad or angry. And then from there, we build out to increasingly complicated versions of those sort of core building blocks, where the vocabulary gets a little more complicated, a little more nuanced. So this is great for someone who's starting that process of really working on their emotional vocabulary, learning how to look inward and really identify how they're feeling. To start by saying, okay, I know I'm feeling something in the happy range. And then to move there and build out towards some of the more specific vocabulary. So, well, am I feeling playful? Am I feeling relaxed? Am I feeling content? Am I feeling ecstatic? What is that sort of happy, good feeling that I've got going on? And you can see, obviously, across all the different core emotions there, how you can kind of build out and sort of identify, sort of pinpoint, what is it exactly that I'm feeling right now? This is another example of a feelings wheel. As I said, if you Google image search, you'll find lots of examples. The thing I like about this feelings wheel in particular is that as you see, if it sort of starts at the top and moves outward in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction, on the right half of this wheel, feelings like joyful, happy, comfortable, content feelings, these are feelings that you're going to notice when your needs are getting met. So if you're in situations professionally, interpersonally, where your needs, your physical needs, your emotional needs, your spiritual needs, those needs are getting met well, you may notice that you're kind of on that right half of the feelings wheel in terms of labeling those emotions. Towards the left half, sort of moving counterclockwise on the wheel, are feelings that you may notice more when those needs are not getting met. So feeling tired, sad, frustrated, upset, those feelings are going to be potentially tied to situations where you're noticing that, again, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, that your needs aren't getting met and you're getting frustrated as a result of that. And so in addition to using these types of wheels, these sort of visual diagrams to label our feelings, like some of the earlier wheels that I just showed, this needs wheel is sort of a companion to that last emotions wheel that I just showed you guys. So the needs wheel is an interesting way of sort of flipping that directionality on this. So instead of looking at what am I feeling, starting at the inside with a core emotion and sort of working your way out towards those more complex emotions you might be noticing. The needs wheel, you may start on the outside and then work your way in towards more central or core needs that may or may not be getting met. And so these can overlay really nicely, again, with the previous wheel where we're looking at what am I feeling and how does this reflect on how my needs are or are not getting met in a situation. This is taking the needs and then looking inward at what is that need really about? What's the core behind that need? Here's another example of a needs wheel. Just from, as I said, there are lots of different examples of these online you can look up. So for example, you might say, right now I'm really feeling a need for friendship and connection. And as you sort of start on the outside of this needs wheel and work your way in, you're seeing, what I really have a need for right now is need for being in relationship and connection. You might say, I feel really playful. I feel a need to play and be challenged, and those on the orange side of this wheel sort of moving in towards this idea of I'm looking for growth. Really what I need is a sense of growth. Individuality, safety, there's all different needs that you're going to be able to sort of drill down and say, what are these core needs about? Another way to look at emotions is this mood meter. And this uses these two axes to sort of answer the question, how are you feeling? And I'm an Apple user, so I have the Apple App Store kind of icon up there for this. It's for $1. You can hop on the App Store and download this and actually track your data through this mood meter, this kind of emotional monitoring system, day to day as you're kind of keeping track. Is a really cool way to sort of track your data and see if you notice patterns, or as you get better at this skill, kind of see where this skill takes you. At its core, the purpose of this mood meter is you may be a person who says, I'm having trouble putting words to feelings. So when I'm saying angry and frustrated and annoyed, and these words, they don't resonate for me as easily. So this mood meter sort of flips that. And instead of you supplying your own vocabulary word, you come into just these two dimensions of pleasantness and energy. So as you can see, going from left to right is the pleasantness scale. The further you go out towards the right, the plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're saying the feeling I'm feeling right now, I don't know what to call it, but it's pleasant. I'm enjoying this. There's a pleasantness to this feeling. So that's moving towards the right. Or I don't like this. This is an unpleasant sensation that I'm having in my body. This feeling is unpleasant, moving towards the left. And then your energy. So are you feeling high energy, amped up? Those would be moving up towards the positive end of the scale. Or is this more of a relaxed, low energy vibe that I'm sitting in? Okay, that's going to take me down towards the bottom part of the scale. So whether you're doing this on your own, just looking at the diagram, or sort of pencil and paper method of kind of figuring out where you fall on that, or whether you're doing it on the app, you can kind of hone in on one of these quadrants and sort of how far in or out you might be on the quadrant. So if you're right there towards the middle where they cross at 0, you're not pleasant or unpleasant. You're not high energy or low energy. And as you move into the farther corners, you start getting higher and higher or lower and lower on those scales. So The app, or if you look up some different diagrams of this, some visuals that you might be able to just kind of do a Google image search, as you move into those areas of those quadrants, the app or the diagrams will give you a word to sort of pinpoint and inform, oh, is that how I'm feeling right now? So if you're feeling high on the pleasantness scale and also high on the energy scale, you might be feeling something like that yellow area of the diagram. You might be feeling inspired, elated, ecstatic, right? If you're feeling pleasant, but lower energy, you might be down in the green, feeling cozy, comfy, peaceful, relaxed. If you are feeling an unpleasant sensation, unpleasant and high energy would be up there in the red and the orange, looking at things potentially like anger or anxiety. Unpleasant but low energy down in the blue might be things like feeling sad or lonely or depressed. So again, just another tool to potentially add to your toolbox. And especially if you are kind of struggling with putting words or labels, using this diagram or this idea of, is it pleasant or unpleasant? Is it high energy or low energy? And kind of moving into a space visually with that diagram. So shared a few tools with you today. Bottom line, why does it matter? I think this is a tough question potentially. I think it's a very personal question for anyone watching. Why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to you? That answer may be different. Fundamentally, I think knowing yourself is really a gift. And especially if you have survived and lived through spaces where your emotions, your mind and body were shut down or not connected in the way that you would like for them to be, the opportunity to reclaim that can be very powerful. To take the time to really pause and check in and to learn and to know your body and your mind and your spirit and how those emotions are kind of playing out in your life. So for me, I think the answer, why does it matter, is really wanting to know myself and wanting to know how I can learn and grow and be the fullest potential of myself, just in my humanity. Emotions are such a uniquely human experience that we get to look inward and identify and express this stuff. So for me, it's really about knowing myself. So just threw a lot of information at you, and I want to make sure we have time for questions and discussion for anyone joining from home today. So I will kind of hit pause and check in and see if anyone would like to ask, discuss, contribute, or also if Becky has any stuff that she'd like to add, and we can kind of chat together for a bit.
Thank you, Sarah. Great information. We did have one comment during your presentation that ice cream is a great analogy.
Thank you. Maybe I'm just an ice cream lover, but it makes sense to me. I'd actually kind of like to go get some ice cream now. It sounds perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, and anyone joining us, feel free to type in any questions or comments that you have in the chat. I know it can sometimes take a few minutes to think of what you want to say and to type it in. So no rush with any of that. I was thinking earlier about the movie Inside Out, that Pixar movie. What a great, resource that is. For kids, but it's also, I saw it as an adult. I thought it was great. Just any kind of, way for emotions and being able to label them, name them, and normalize them as being, a healthy, normal part of human existence. I think that's it's a great thing when we can do that.
Yeah, I love that movie. And as you could probably tell from my presentation, I love visuals. I'm a very visual person. And so when I have something that I can kind of latch onto, I can read stuff and it's kind of up here in the clouds to me. But when I have something I can really grab onto, like the little guy, the little angry guy or joy or sadness or whatever from the movie, right? Like those core emotions, you see that, I can kind of connect to that. And it makes it feel more real. So whether it's childish or not, I don't know, maybe I'm childish, but I think for me, that visual component is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think also to your point, Becky, just normalizing the idea that this is part of the human experience. We should have the fullness of the human experience of all these emotions. This presentation that we did on Tuesday as well, we're talking a little bit about this idea of like, are there good or bad emotions? And no, I think, the reality is that emotions just exist. They are real. We have, physiological and chemical and things going on in our body that we then are able to detect and notice and have these emotional experiences, right? So sometimes the way that we express that may bother us or other people. Or, as that mood meter shows, some of them may be more or less pleasant to endure, but they're not bad or wrong. There's no wrong emotional reaction. There's no bad emotions. There are just feelings. And then figuring out kind of what we do with that, I think, is the next step, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And we had a comment, as a survivor, it's so important to realize that emotions can coexist, like joy for how far you've come, but grief for what happened to you.
Yes, absolutely. And what I would add to that, right? So yes, that the Rocky Road ice cream, right? They can all be in there together. A big part of that, though, is that they can all be in there simultaneously, right? It's like this and this. Often we sort of feel like we have to negate one to sort of say, oh, well, I've come so far. I should be feeling this amount of gratitude. If I'm also feeling sadness or anger or any of these other feelings, there feels like there's like a shame, or like I have to kind of push that aside because I have to lean into this other positive emotional space. When in reality, we can hold both of those simultaneously to say, yes, I am happy and grateful and proud, and also sad and mad and all, right? It's this and this. Yeah. And doing that at the same time takes a lot of emotional insight and maturity, I think, to be able to manage that and to really hold both of those at the same time. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an important comment, because I think especially for survivors who maybe were abused a long time ago and have done a lot of work over the years, or even recently, through therapy or support networks, in the healing process, that there can kind of be that self-judgment, right? Of, this happened such a long time ago. I've come so far. So why do I still feel, sad, or still feel this sense of grief? But, it's a big thing that happened to you, and it's okay to grieve that. I mean, it's like losing a loved one. It could have lost someone important to you years and years and years ago, but it doesn't mean that you stop missing them or stop feeling, sad that they're gone.
Yeah. And I find a lot of that comes from places where we're using should statements, like I should be over it by now, or I should be able to move on, or things like that. Those should statements, which are very toxic. There is no should. There is no should when it comes to emotions. Again, emotions are not good or bad. Emotions just exist, and they're there for a reason. They're there to inform us about stuff. So actually the gift of feeling sad or angry may be that it attunes you to the injustice, or it helps to drive you towards a career in making a difference in the world, whether that's in the world of survivorship or in something completely unrelated. But just this idea that I can use this to fuel positives in my life and in my future, rather than dwelling on that idea of I should feel this way or I shouldn't feel that way, which can really be limiting and really trap people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. We still got a little bit here, so if anyone has any other questions or comments, please feel free to share. And in case I forget to say so at the end of our time together, we'll leave the chat up for a little while, after the session. So if you want to continue the conversation, you can. You're also welcome to hop over to the Survivor Forum and share, your thoughts or experiences or reflections at any point. So Sarah, I know a question I asked last time, do you find, so I know like since COVID, there's a lot of, online therapeutic services available, some even like chat-based services. Do you find that people have an easier time kind of expressing their emotions in a face-to-face environment where they can kind of feed off of the sort of the body language of the person they're speaking with? If it's easier or harder online, or if it's just really individual?
I think it's very individual. I think that there are some people who feel much more comfortable in person and some people who feel much more comfortable online. Some of that may be related to honestly age and just growing up with technology and access to technology. I think this may be an overgeneralization, but I think to some extent, some of the younger folks feel maybe a little more comfortable with technology and have sort of much of their lived experience has come through screens and technology. So the idea of doing therapy through the screen is very natural and organic to the way that they live much of their life. Maybe compared to some folks who are maybe my age or even older, who grew up in the analog world, and that sort of technology component doesn't feel as personal maybe to them. But also for some people, the emotional safety that comes with a little bit of distance, right? Sometimes that can actually free people to feel that they can express more, where they might feel inhibited in a room or where they have to make eye contact or be physically close to someone. They may feel that they can, just be more comfortable to express themselves in an electronic format. So I think it kind of does vary person to person. Yeah, it's a good question though.
Yeah, I was thinking about that and, thinking that throughout my life, I feel like whenever I've had to have like difficult conversations or I've had to share, something difficult, taking a walk with someone and being able to like walk and talk at the same time. So you're like physically present with that person, but you don't have to make that like intimate eye contact, for me has been super helpful. It's kind of like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And in my therapy office, I have a basket full of fidgets. Some people feel that they can they feel more comfortable when they have a physical outlet for some, like a stress ball or a fidget spinner or just something textural in their hands to kind of do. When I reached up, I saw I have my hair tie on my wrist, and this is my fidget. So, whether I'm on screen or in a session, a lot of times I will kind of sit and stretch and twist this, and that kind of gives a space for my body to do work that it needs to do. Again, emotions are not just mental. Emotions are very physical. So for many of us, when we're going through difficult emotional experiences, having a physical outlet can be very helpful. And you'll see people kind of bouncing their knee on the ground or playing with something fidgety in their hands, going for a walk. Any of those things can not only break down that eye-to-eye contact, but also just give your body a thing to be doing as you're processing, which in my experience is very helpful, especially for folks who are working through trauma.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find that there are any challenges or barriers in terms of societal gendered expectations around emotions, just, with what men in general or male survivors specifically are feeling and are expected to feel, and the same for female survivors, or, those who don't have a specific gender identifier?
Yes, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, the reality is that in our world, we are socialized with gender norms around emotion, right? Men and boys are socialized from very young ages to hold emotion in, to not display emotion, and particularly to not display more vulnerable emotions, right? So anger might be more permissible for a male, but sadness and some of the softer forms of emotional expression are certainly more stigmatized, I think, still in our society for men compared to women. I think that obviously that plays out in a number of ways with people not learning how to identify those emotions, learning and practicing maladaptive strategies for how to stuff those emotions down or hide or suppress those emotions rather than to allow them to just exist or to express them in different ways. I think in general, women are socialized to have more of an emotional vocabulary. Again, from a young age, girls play. We see with very young girls where they're socialized around playing dolls, playing house, talking through imaginative experiences, playing school, where they are talking about their feelings. They're being socialized in ways to learn how to identify and express those, and they are allowed to do that more, societally. So yeah, I think all of that then factors into, as adults, how we then relearn or unlearn some of the things that maybe we learned growing up.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we just have a couple more minutes. If there are any other questions or comments, or even just reflections on your own experience with emotions, or the way people react to emotions, or being able to talk about emotions. I know it's a whole
There's
gamut.
So many pieces, right? As you're naming, I'm thinking like we could have 40 of these sessions, naming emotions, communicating about those emotions, how we behave based on emotions, how other people react to our emotions. Like there's just so much. Lots of moving parts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like we've mentioned before, I mean, this is such a relevant and important topic, even if you're not a survivor. I mean, everyone in life experiences emotions, and they, go through different experiences that elicit the whole range of emotions. So it's helpful regardless of who you are and what your life experience has been, to be able to kind of name it, to understand yourself, to understand how emotions show up in your mind and your body. I mean, it's such a great skill to have.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Sarah, and for troubleshooting the connection issues. I know it's, like we always joke, technology is great when it works.
Yep.
Thank you for rolling with that. I did want to let everyone know too that it's not on the Survivor Space page yet, but we do have our very first topical discussion Survivor Circles session scheduled for Friday, July 28th at noon Eastern. And that will be led by Sarah and also one of our survivor advocates, Angie Kahn. So I'm really looking forward to that. The topic will be boundaries, which is I'm so looking forward to that. Such an important topic. So if you're free, please plan to join us. Bring your lunch. Join the conversation on the 28th at noon. We'll have that information up on the webpage soon. And for those who find this format of participating in the Survivor Circles maybe a little clunky, we're going to improve things for the next go around so that you'll be able to see everything, chat all on the same screen. You won't have to look in two different places. So looking forward to that as well. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.